What's up, everybody?
Hey, everyone. We are here for your next panel, Cannabis Media Disrupting the Mainstream, with your moderator, Chris Foltz.
Yeah, let's talk about everything dope.
Chris is Vice President of Global Reach for the Sensi Media Group.
From his roots in national politics to a battle with drug addiction, 119 days in county jail, and losing everything to the point of homelessness, Chris has reestablished himself as one of the most engaging initiators of social impact and development in the nation. I've been so excited for this panel.
Take it away, Chris.
Thank you so much. And that's Weed and Grub. I don't know if you guys follow them yet, but you need to. I mean, I think it's really cool. We had a little fun in the virtual space yesterday, so they do play well both inside the industry and in the virtual space. But I want to thank you both for all that you've done this week. Everyone enjoys you, and I look forward to all to come in your career. It's going to be bright. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. I want to welcome everyone. Again, my name is Chris Foltz, and I'm with Sensi Media Group, and I've got a great panel today. This is live, so I want to encourage everybody to make sure that you put questions in your Emerge matrix. So when you're watching this on the screen live, you have the ability to just scroll down and put some questions in. I've got a great group of people here today, and our topicality is disrupting the mainstream and from a media perspective. And cannabis has been doing this from day one. You know, it's still such a gray area. What are we allowed to talk about? What are we allowed to advertise around? Even what can we put in our photo illustrations? So I've assembled a panel today of some awesome friends that I think really do some cutting edge things in the industry. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, but I'm just going to go around the circle right here. You know, Andre, you know, I can tell you this, buddy, you know, you spent so many years writing some compelling pieces in cannabis trends. I've read some of them. I've seen you everywhere in the cannabis space. You know, I'm so happy to have you here. And, you know, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. And I'd love to ask you some questions about what you see trend-wise that's coming up. You know, so I'm going to come to you and have you start the conversation. But I'm going to go around the circle right here and just give my take on everyone. Stone Slade, you know, I love this guy. Stone's the host of a new show that we have coming out called Hittin the High Road. Phenomenal, I guess a phenomenal case study of what the canna-curious in society is all about right now. You don't have to be the hardcore stoner to have an interest in the cannabis space and want to know what happens. And Stone's going to help guide that story across the country for Sensi Media Group and for Hittin the High Road, which is going to be phenomenal. For those of you who have not met David yet or seen the trailer for CBD Nation, it is one of the most compelling films I've seen. I'm a documentary nerd, but this appeals to me on a scientific level, appeals to me on an entertainment level, and literally pulls at the emotional heartstrings. And I think that for those of you who haven't seen it, we're going to play the trailer today for that. And I'm going to come back to you in just a moment, David. So thankful to have you here. And Ron Kolb and Stephanie Wilson, you know, not to introduce them as a team, but if it wasn't for those two individuals, I wouldn't be here today. You know, not only were they the gateway for me into the cannabis industry to where I'm at right now, they're also the gateway to some of the most prolific editorial content and creative I've ever seen in the industry. You know, we all grew up with such great publications like High Times, Cannabis Culture, Dope Magazine. But when Sensi came on the map in 2016, they wanted to introduce a new perspective into the lifestyle arena, because that's the one thing, the one line that we have been able to cross as an industry without any question is welcoming the cannabis into the lifestyle of Americans and people around the world every single day. So we are graced by the presence of Ron Kolb, who's the co-founder with Stephanie Wilson, the editor-in-chief of Sensi Magazine. So I really appreciate you both being here today. So what topics today that we want to talk about is the media. What's going on right now in the cannabis space? What are some of the trends that we see? Who's doing them? And what's the next space? What I love about this is we have such a diverse audience here. I'm going to kick it off with you, Andre. You know, you spent a lot of years writing for great publications. So, you know, Forbes, Huffington Post. I've read you on Entrepreneur. Why cannabis writing? Why are you even in this arena? And what is it that has driven you to where you're at right now and all that you're involved in the space?
First of all, I'd really like to acknowledge you for your authentic introduction. I found that really touching, actually. And I think that's part of what's critical when you're talking about journalism and you're coming from that space. And you rarely see that. So before we even get into technology and we get into innovation, you have to come from that place. So that was just remarkable. So I want to acknowledge you for that. Now, what I started from was coming from the technology space. I worked several years as a product manager at Intel. Right? I had a development team in India. And what became interesting after doing that for about 15 years and writing about technologies, looking at the advancements in the cannabis space and seeing particularly how some of these ancillary innovations are transferable to mainstream commercial applications, right? So when you start to look at that, really the money that we're putting into artificial intelligence and machine learning now is going to make a smarter tomato. You know, it doesn't have to be GMO. And that's one of the byproducts of what we're putting into it. I think one of the other questions you said is, you know, what does this industry need as far as, you know, the next innovation? It would be wonderful to see the cannabis industry really champion blockchain as part of a solution, right? And we have the challenge right in front of us when we talk about, when we look at the tax situation. You know, really the whole part of that is that there's just so many losses, so many loopholes, and there's such a bad job at actually being able to account for things back and forth. You know, and imagine if we were an industry that came in and successfully deployed blockchain across the board. We had so much efficiency across the tax, the way we did taxes and conducted that it becomes a model, right, for, you know, mainstream. And I think that's kind of the type of stuff we need to look for.
I really appreciate that. You know, and I think that when you're looking at the future here, you know, so many things, it's like the government, right? Government had things like GPS 20, 30 years before we had it in society. And same thing with blockchain, same thing with now you see a lot of the innovations in technology and even the writing space. You brought up artificial intelligence. And I find it interesting. There's not a week that goes by that as a magazine that there's not a company that's coming and say, hey, listen, we've got the best AI writers. Oh, you literally can get rid of the entire editorial team. We'll even name the AI. I'll be honest. I have an AI that goes to meetings before I get bussed out with me to all of our Sensi meetings that takes notes. So I guess I'm kind of being hypocritical. But that brings me, I'm going to jump over to you, Stephanie. You know, living in this world with technology that we have right now and the ability for a bit of software to write fairly compelling articles, but not authentic. Where do you see, coming from traditional journalism, coming across the cannabis space and being one of the most award-winning editors-in-chief that I've seen in the industry, what does that mean to the editorial of the future? Is it going to be authentic? What is your take on it?
I mean, there's a difference between facts and writing. And so I think that's where a lot of it just misses out and misses the chance to connect with readers, is to not just give them the ultimate facts. It's to tell a story and paint a larger picture. And especially in this critical time when we are trying to make cannabis move over into the mainstream. And we do that by changing hearts and minds. That's, Ron and I have been saying that since day one. It's kind of one of our taglines, like changing hearts and minds. So how would a computer do that? There's definitely a place for it, and especially because we want to get the information out there. We want as many people as possible to be seeing it. So I'm not against it. I just don't think that, you know, the same way that, you know, the movies didn't replace television, or the internet does not replace magazines. And so AI is not going to replace writers. Just because there's something new doesn't mean that what was there and what is good is going to be gone.
I mean, I think that's a very good point. And, you know, I've learned so much about editorial from Stephanie, and, you know, not only has your career spanned the cannabis space, but, you know, coming from the mainstream world, you know, what I've noticed is that you bring all of the traditions and what would be considered, you know, the reverence towards editorial into the magazine's publication, where I see so many brands out there focusing on advertorials and only getting their information out from a sales perspective. And it's almost like editorial takes a back seat. Do you think that keeping the authentic writer in there keeps that in check a little bit?
I think it absolutely does. And I think one of the things that separates magazines from a lot of websites is we're looking at it as a journey when you open up a magazine, and it takes you from the beginning to the end and you're flowing with it. And so a website, they're just one-off articles and they're not necessarily taking people on a journey. And so even with our content online, it's built as part of something larger than itself. So it just tends to flow.
That is amazing. And, you know, when you bring up the emotion, and that brings me over to you, David, you know, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of documentaries, a lot of film. Everybody is now a director, producer with their own stories about CBD on their websites. And I've seen a lot of things, but I have not seen something as compelling and it's in a true reverence to storytelling in an appropriate way, factually, and opening it up for people to explore their own research than CBD Nation. I'm honored to have you here today. What compelled you to make this piece, CBD Nation?
What is more fascinating as a documentary filmmaker than to have your entire world changed by the subject that you're studying. I came into this knowing nothing whatsoever, really almost nothing whatsoever about cannabis. I still, till this day, when I find myself in cannabis conferences, maybe less here because it's virtual, but every time I've been around people who have been in the cannabis world for many years, I feel like a total outsider because I came into it with no vocabulary. I've been high a handful of times, that was it. I had no real knowledge and no real respect for it or reverence for it in the beginning. And when I started researching and studying and looking into the science of medical cannabis, I started realizing very quickly that it's very real and deserving of respect and deserving of study and deserving of a proper approach to it by the media. And I started thinking about, why do I not have a more respectful and reverent position about cannabis? And I started thinking, well, what's my experience with it? Beyond my personal experience, what's my media intake of it? And I started thinking about movies about stoners, right? And movies about stoners are always very silly and very funny. Some of them are great, right? But they're all silly. They're never serious. And I started thinking, okay, what documentaries have I seen? And I'm thinking about the CNN documentary, the famous one, the Gupta one, right? And I've seen a few others over the years, and all of them are sort of they're more reverent, but they always have this person that shows up and says, but actually maybe it's really bad for you.
The big reveal.
They're
right?
always sort of it's always sort of presented via emotional anecdotes, a smidgen of science, and someone saying, but maybe it doesn't work at all. And so I started building this like scenario in my head of okay, this is the world that I lived in terms of my exposure to this subject. When I saw, when I started going on Google Scholar and putting in terms like cannabidiol and THC and stuff like that, and I started realizing, whoa, there's tens of thousands of scientific papers by leading institutes about medical cannabis. Why is this not the communication? So all we hear about cannabis is, well, a lot of what we hear about cannabis has to do with racial inequality, which is a hideous, gigantic subject that must be discussed often, right? But we don't go into the science enough. And so I realized maybe to add something to the body of work out there, I can make a movie that's just about science and that kind of ignores all the other aspects, the social problems of it, which are hugely important, and just to keep the scope focused on science and facts, thereby sort of making it accessible and comfortable for people who are, uncomfortable with it, like maybe I was in the beginning.
I think that's what it does. I think what it allowed you to be comfortable about taking information on something that maybe was way outside the box. So really, it was a path for your own understanding of where you're coming from with this opinion about the cannabis industry that led you down this to possibly help change the opinions of literally millions of people.
Exactly. It was that is what this film is. The film is an attempt for me to become comfortable with cannabis. Well, I'll change that. I became comfortable with cannabis 10 minutes after hearing Deddy Meiri's TED Talk, where he discussed how different combinations of cannabis compounds are destroying different cancer cells. This guy who's the head of a giant research lab of a big research lab at the Technion University in Israel, which I grew up in Israel, so I know about the Technion University from when I was a kid. It's a highly respectable institute, and this very serious PhD is talking about cannabis killing cancer cells. There's no pot culture to this talk,
That's where we come from, pot culture too, right? So it's
right.
It's kind of one of those things.
And pot culture as an outsider was something that was not my life, right? And so I was uneasy. I was judgmental of it. I'm embarrassed now to say that I was judgmental of it. And the documentaries do an amazing thing, which is they can they can challenge you in a real way. Like they can challenge you in a way that Twitter cannot challenge you, right? If you're shown facts and if you're shown real emotion that is based on honest facts, you know, what can you do? You can either say, well, I'm going to ignore this forever, or you can just go and study a little bit.
That's wonderful, David. I'm so thankful of that. And, you know, you brought up some great points about where your opinions were about the industry and where they're at now. That brings me to you, Stone. You know, when I first met you, Stone, you know, it was very interesting because you came to me and said, hey, listen, Chris, you know, I'm not one of these stoners. I'm not all, and then, you know, I see you're tattooed. I see you fit the bill. You grew up around the Grateful Dead and some of these most prolific bands because of your family and all of this. And then we sat down and talking about this show and, you know, your opinion of why you wanted to expose society to a different viewpoint of cannabis, kind of from a non-judgment, you know, standpoint, I thought was prolific. You know, why did you decide from, you know, your history that you've come from, being on television yourself, to decide to go down the path of making a television show that's based in the cannabis world, Stone? I'm interested.
Well, you know, David really hit it on the head, and David, before the David he is now, is my target. Like I need to hit those people just because we've been lied to for so long about this, and now it's finally legal, and there's people that still have this notion of what cannabis is, this crazy, scary plant, this crazy drug. And, you know, it's I felt like the shows that are out there, like he said, you know, they're goofy, they're funny, and, you know, I like a lot of them, but we need something that's going to help normalize cannabis use, you know, and that's where I feel the concept that we've come up with is what we need to connect with those people that were like David, who just like think of it as, oh, that's a, you know, those stoners, ooh, gross, dirty, you know, we want those people. We want to get those people in and normalize it for them.
You know, when you're out here and you've been around in the industry, you've gone into dispensaries, you've talked to people, you know, even when you're originally out here pitching this storyline to people that are participating, what was the reaction? Was it like one of those things they were interested in telling their story, or they looked at it as a good marketing situation or good play in the media? What was the reaction?
Yeah, I got a little bit of everything. I got some people that just were like, what are you talking about? Get out of here. We're running a business. And then there was people definitely like that saw a hook. Is there a way I could benefit from this? And then there's been people that reacted like you. They're like, oh my gosh, this is something that we need. This is something that needs to be done this way because it's not being done this way right now.
I love that. You know, in talking about those people and making those connections for them, that brings me to Ron. And there's no question that this group would not be assembled, that I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't be able to focus my time and attention on making an impact to this industry if it wasn't for Ron Kolb. I remember when I first met him, I was sitting in training, and, you know, I'm this loudmouth Sicilian kid that spent his entire life since he was like 12 working in professional politics, right? So, you know, then I became a heroin addict and went to jail and became homeless. So it's an entirely another animal, and started all over on the other side of politics. So when I'm sitting there, I'm like, Ron, you know, my goal is to help get the message of Sensi out in a broader vision, in a broader capacity. And he was teaching me, he's like, Chris, listen, I'm not scared to introduce you and connect you to this industry. But, you know, we all basically go through the steps to be able to make an impact on the inside. And this industry is so much different than the rest. But he took the time and made the connections for me. Ultimately, here I am today. And, you know, we have great projects like what we're working on with Stone and everybody in this call. Ron, why did you, with your treasured history as a publisher in magazines across this country, why did you decide to uproot, move to Colorado, and start Sensi Magazine with great co-founders like Stephanie and Tay, who's been on 2 of my panels thus far?
Well, Chris, I thank you for the question, but I just want to say, in listening to this conversation, you know, you talk about disruptive in media, right? And you start off with Andre, who has the chance to recognize the authenticity of your introduction, right? And how that raw connection matters. And then you have a chance to listen to Stephanie, David, and Stone. And if you don't see the face light as they talk about what they do and their projects, you know, the thing that drove me to move to Colorado originally was my son, who has autism. And we read a bunch of the qualifying paperwork and studies that were submitted to Michigan back when they were trying to get autism approved as a qualifying condition. And when I read those studies, I was just blown away. And then I came to Colorado and I met people like Stephanie and David and Andre and Stone and you, Chris, you know, that have this authentic heart and that are just incredible storytellers. And you know, when I looked around and I saw the way most media covered plant medicine or cannabis in general, you know, there was very much this kind of product or subculture angle. And you know, the subculture, Chris, that you talk about, right, that we all kind of grew up in, is the roots and foundation and always to be respected and carried on. But I felt like there was an opportunity to tell stories in a way that would land different, that they would hit the heart, like Stephanie talked about, and that they would connect with the mind. And through that, we've had this, you know, big ambition that we can shift the culture, right? That we can, through conversations, through stories, through articles, piece by piece, story by story, city by city, we can drastically impact the communities we're in. So anyways, that's why.
You know, so I'm so appreciative that you're here. And, you know, I find it interesting because there's not that many circles I've been in the cannabis world where people don't know you, Ron. And as the connector that you are, what I would say is you're probably one of the strongest believers. You know, you're a believer in brands. You're a believer of pretty much everybody that we've ever worked with. I've never heard you not be a steadfast supporter of the mission and vision. And I think that what often gets lost in the industry is people want to be wrapped up in the industry. It's cool, right? Like, you know, we're finally at the cool kids table, the proverbial cool kids table, right? And it's one of those things where, you know, you taught me that you can make the table. You know, you can help people sit at the table. You can help the table get larger, because collectively, that's how we make change, right? And you know, I've had some of the most interesting conversations, arguments, off the wall, zany conversations with you, Ron. But you know, through that process, right, we've identified a lot of gaps in the industry and in media, and I've sat there and watched you close them, you know, step by step. So I mean, your impact is second to none. And you know, I could tell you that when I asked people to join the panel, you know, everybody was excited about it, you know. And I'm jump back to you, Andre. You know, for somebody that has been involved in the industry so much, right? You know, you've written for these great publications. You chose to be referenced as a cannabis connector involved in this, you know, versus any of the other hyperbolic titles that I could have put underneath your name for this panel. Why did you choose?
Taken. So I had to,
Great answer.
I had to come up with another one. You know, really, I benefited from being in LA and the Hollywood area, and really able to meet across the board, from executives to going to, you know, the mansion parties. Which, by the way, Dave, we need to get you to, now that you're graduating, to an appreciation for marijuana. So
you're coming, buddy. We got tickets.
Once we get out of COVID, we got to get them to a Sensi party. But so that really is the case. I found myself, and you get that way when you do quite a bit of writing and it's internationally recognized, that there's just connections that invariably happen, saying, okay, listen, I'm looking for these licenses. I'm looking to do this kind of deal. So I have several different projects going on now. One of them with Native American tribes, and some other things. And it really is those kinds of connections. I thought you were going to ask me how I was bugging you for questions on this. What are the questions? Did you send?
Yeah, right. So, you know, when he reached out to me, Andre reached out and he said, listen, Chris, what are the questions you're asking? I'm like, listen, man, I come from politics. You know, you're getting it as it's live, because, you know, that's really what it is. It's about the candid conversation. And you see, I was so confident, knowing all of your backgrounds, knowing how you are as human beings, that's what sometimes the industry misses, right? I think Emerge has done a fantastic job by putting people in. And thank you, Andre. For those of you that don't know, Andre, one of the co-founders of Emerge. And if it wasn't for people like you overextending your bandwidth for all of us, we wouldn't be here. So I love to see your impact. And what that does is it makes an interesting, as we've gone through COVID, Andre, you see a lot of change. We were a print publication. We still are a print publication, but that is our bread and butter. We love it. We're the best in the industry of it. But then even us as a brand, we have to pause on that. Being a writer that has spent a lot of time writing in other publications, you've seen a lot of pivots that have happened out here in the industry. You've seen a lot of people react interesting to the COVID situation. What is your take on how media is going to change post-COVID when we're looking at the cannabis arena?
I think it's so interesting. We talked about this on a panel that we had on the first day. And what was happening was there was a difference between being, when we talk about authenticity, being genuinely pitched something related to COVID or being something pitched gratuitously. Like we donated 2,000 masks, for example, and you're right about us, this type of thing. Whereas you have an example like Cookies, who went above and beyond and said, listen, we're putting, lives before property and having these genuine campaigns about it. And I think it's interesting to see this as an example of who can be the most creative and meaningful at the same time. And we don't see a lot of that in this industry typically.
That's a very good point. Stephanie, as somebody that is an editor-in-chief, the buck stops with you when it comes to editorial content. I see with my own eyes how many people pitch editorial content. And you brought up a good point, Andre. Stephanie, there's a lot of people out there that are almost attaching themselves temporarily to social impact bandwagons in order to appeal to editors, get some editorial coverage. As an editor-in-chief, what are you looking for in the types of stories? What engages you to want to write a story about a brand and product that's out there? That's you, Steph.
Yeah, an authentic, true story that you just kind of know when you see it. Like it's something that moves you, and so you want to tell those stories. And there's not really a formula for it. And the thing with the formulas is those probably aren't the ones that are going to make it through the filter. I mean, on any given day,
you get buried in
200, 500 pages. Yeah. No, there's some that they come in without your name in it because it just has the glitch where it's just pound signs and whatnot. So yeah, there's and they're constant. It's constant all day, every day, hundreds of pitches, and just being able to look at them all is impossible. But then there are those ones, and there's people who take the time to know the publication and know the types of stories that we tell and how we tell them, and then to pitch a story to us that's right for us. And those are the ones that make through the noise, the ones that actually take the time to know the outlet and know whether or not it is a good fit for it. Because there's a lot of stuff that we don't cover, not because it's not interesting, it's just not really part of our forte. And so when I get pitches for stuff like that, it just tells me that you're not even aware of what you're doing. You're just mass blowing it out there. And that's it happens across the media landscape. It's not unique to cannabis. It's not going to stop. It's actually probably going to grow as more and more brands get into it, and more cannabis brands are hiring larger PR firms and larger marketing teams. And so it's growing, but that's an exciting revelation as well, because it's just elevating the game. It's taking a lot of the stuff that you see in mainstream publications and mainstream everything and bringing it into the cannabis space. And that just, all it does is serve to elevate us. There's that quote about, rising tides raise all ships. So all you want to do is have everyone in the industry succeed. The more we all succeed, the more everyone succeeds.
I remember growing up in school that, our teachers would tell us, hey, listen, there's no way that there's ever going to be calculators when we're older, right? You're not going to be able to use them in society. And I was also told by those same teachers that if I didn't write a press release or a story pitch, with APA style, and mind you, I come from PR and I disrupt that arena. But is there truth to that, right? Is there something that will automatically disqualify your story from getting read by you and possibly landing in a magazine and across the country?
No, I don't follow rules, so I won't say that there's a hard set rule that says, no, I won't do this, because, you never know. Even one of those mass pitches could be really effing cool. It could be the thing I'm looking for that day that would be the perfect missing component of a story. So, whatever works is what works.
I think that's phenomenal. You know, I'm gonna go back to you, David. You know, you spent years probably thinking about this, and then it took the period of time to actually make the film. Now that it's been shown, I mean, I watched it on Amazon Prime. For those of you guys that don't have access, I mean, the film's everywhere. It has what I would say crossed the mainstream line. It's picked up, I believe, Gravitas Adventures is one of your distributors on this. What has changed from the point that it started getting this attention, you know, from when it was a concept into your mind? Are you seeing the traction? Are you getting people reaching out to you? What's happening in your life right now?
This is happening in my life right now. A lot of this kind of thing, and I've never experienced so much curiosity about something that I've made, like with this. I've had people say, "Oh, this is nice. This project that you did, I like it. I'm touched by it." But this is extreme. There's a lot of people are really interested in this, and I think the reason is that everyone has a connection to getting sick, and everyone has experienced the medical industry, you know, and everyone has experienced side effects or has had their parents experience side effect, and everyone experiences wanting something better. And I think most people have an innate understanding that cannabis is very useful medically. I'm gonna guess that even people who are sort of anti-cannabis people or cannabis afraid are kind of aware or have heard a lot that cannabis is useful. And so I think there's a lot of curiosity. And when people hear that there's a movie about CBD, I think people are curious. And I'm using CBD as the movie is about cannabis science, about cannabis medical science research. And CBD is sort of a little bit of a trick in a way, because it's kind of like the term is being used as a bit of a bait, as a bit of a gateway.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, good.
On its head.
So good.
Like an educational gateway into really studying about cannabis medicine.
Dude, I love that, by the way. That is epic.
The gateway use. Yeah, let's destroy that word in the stupid context. You know?
It's so good. That is brilliant.
I've got your trailer queued up, David. You know, I've got. I'm just going to play because I know we're getting short on time.
Okay.
I want to play this for those of you that have not seen this film yet. It is definitely worth your time, and it's worth the watch. I'm just going to put this on right now. It's probably just going to be on my screen, but that should be good enough for you all.
The doctor walks in and he said, "That's your daughter's face." It looked like somebody had been shot in the face with a cannon.
1,000 twitches a day, grandma's for an hour and a half. He was in an ambulance 42 times in the first 4.5 years of his life.
I was addicted to opiates and on antidepressants that made me want to kill myself.
I spent days in bed.
I was taking 7 opioids a day.
Every day we'd see her just deteriorating.
12 different pharmaceuticals and nothing was working. It just kept getting worse. I couldn't handle it anymore.
I just got really desperate.
Do anything you can.
Until I went on Facebook and I saw things about CBD.
Cannabidiol, or CBD, is a compound commonly found in the cannabis plant.
Go freaking look at the research. Stop saying that there's no evidence. There is evidence, and it's documented.
We're now really beginning to apply modern science to cannabis.
There's a lot of research with CBD.
CBD for the last 40 years has been bred out of cannabis because it basically curbs the high for that recreational purpose.
At first, I was actually really scared to try CBD. We slowly got off of all of the opioids that I was on.
Come on, snap out of it, Jaden. First day I gave it to Jaden, it was the first day I ever seen my son not have a seizure in his life.
It has given me my life back.
How fast was the change?
Oh, overnight.
Cannabis is a potent anti-inflammatory and a pain reliever.
We're not really getting the information that we need about these things.
If you treat breast cancer with cannabis, you block the cancer cell's ability to migrate.
People don't know about it, and they don't really want to know about it.
Cannabis is extremely effective in treating a wide variety of conditions.
Arthritis,
diabetes,
multiple sclerosis.
I was diagnosed with bone tumors. That's what it did to my face.
PTSD,
Fibromyalgia,
anxiety, endometriosis, cancer.
It blocks epileptic attacks.
How could it be that one remedy
could actually help so many different things.
There's an entire system in our body that's activated by cannabis molecules.
It's a system that regulates a lot of different processes.
The system is located in every organ.
It seems that our bodies have evolved to work with this plant.
To research this phenomenon,
Results are incredible. The pharmaceutical drugs that we prescribe have a lot more risk to them. Cannabis medicine has created amazing results for patients.
She's on absolutely no medications besides the cannabis oil.
You're a young lady, you're growing like a weed. This is a human rights issue.
Because it helped me, other kids should have a chance to be helped too.
Nobody's ever died from the cannabis plant in any quantity.
I probably could have saved more lives.
We are going to see people take responsibility for their own health.
We've all taken control of our own medical journey.
I feel like I was lucky to have the tumor, or else I wouldn't be doing any of this.
Wow. It's just epic, you know. I mean, even the trailer alone, right? For those of you who have not seen this film, if that's not compelling enough for you to see it, it's an amazing journey. You know, I've played a couple different roles in the hemp world and made some formulas, but you know, when you bring it down to the science, David, I couldn't thank you enough for bringing this to our society, bringing it to our industry, and sharing it with us here today. I know that you did do a screening. I know the D'Angelo's, Andrew D'Angelo, is an absolute brilliant fan of what you're doing right here, and I just can't wait to spread this message even further. So I really appreciate that. You know, Ron, I saw you and you're sitting there, and I'm not sure if you've seen this trailer yet before. You know, I send it, but you know, I said, you know, you're a busy guy, but you've been wanting to see it. What is your opinion on that? You've been in this industry for a while. You had a son that is impacted in a way where you saw this actually happen. How accurate is what you're seeing in that trailer for kind of what the life is like being a parent of somebody that's facing it?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, the interesting thing about autism and my understanding of it is that, you know, there's about 25% of the kids that have autism that the group that we worked with here in Colorado saw about 25% really have no reaction whatsoever. So autism is a tricky dynamic, right? For some kids, it's like a miracle, and it is something that can make a big difference. And then for others, you see nothing. The education side of what you're doing, David, the intro, the way you built that bridge, is brilliant, and it's so needed. You know, as a parent, one of the complexities still today is like, what is real, and where do I go, and where do I begin? And if you talk to 50 people, you'll probably get 50 different opinions. And this is, you know, on the ground in a place like Colorado. That's a mature market.
And you'll probably be sort of threatened and fear-mongered at the same time also.
Yeah. It's a complex situation. So you go with your heart, you go with your gut. Our family was fortunate enough to meet Jason Cranford early in getting here in Colorado, and Jason grows a 1-to-1 that's on his farm, and he, you know, extracts with like I'm losing how he does it, but it's not CO2, not hydrocarbon. He has this whole tech that he uses that's pretty phenomenal, and we were introduced to that, and our son didn't sleep well and had a real tough time with tics, and night number 1 slept 9 hours. So, you know, you can imagine if you sleep 3-4 hours maybe a night, and a lot of tossing and turning, and all of a sudden you sleep, it's like your entire world is radically changed. So anyways, it's this is why, you know, storytelling is such an important component, and content and distribution of that content, and getting, you know, stories in the hands of people who are curious, that resonate and that open up hearts and minds, and that don't freak them out and scare them, you know. So I think that there's a massive opportunity for everything that David and Stephanie and Stone are doing to help shift that conversation.
You know, I think you bring up such a good point, Ron. You know, listen to everyone, and I'm coming to you here, Stone. You know, Ron, you went on a journey. All of us went on a journey to get where we're at today. And the funny enough, after listening to everything, I think some of the most disruptive things that can be done right now in media is being authentic. You know, in the world that we're living in right now, politics is in pretty much every conversation. We're so close to the elections. There's fake news. There's robots that write things. You know, I probably got a cat on the property that can write an article, but not good. Don't worry, Stephanie, I'm not pitching that. Authenticity is something that this industry was built on originally, and authenticity kind of, you know, has moved around a little bit. But what I'm hearing from everybody on here is truly authentic curiosity in your own life that has carved out your own past to get where you're at today, to be these irreplaceable media components of the cannabis landscape. I'm intrigued and excited about what there's to come. Stone, coming to you, you know, you went on a journey literally yourself. So we're in the process of going on a journey. For those of you that don't know, Hittin the High Road, with COVID, we had a bit of delay in shooting, but we're traveling around our markets, the Sensi family's markets throughout the country, and we're really looking at a behind the scenes and in front of the scenes approach towards what cannabis is all about, what the industry is all about. And Stone has such a unique approach of understanding things, but the curiosity is what drives you, Stone. Would you say that's probably your number one thing? What was your number one drive to get out there the first time?
I mean, definitely the curiosity. You know, I'm going to go out there as a curious connoisseur and really, you know, I'm there to learn with the viewer. It's been amazing being on this panel, Andre and David, and hearing, you know, everything going on. And man, I'm just happy to be a part.
Your trailer's coming up. Your trailer's coming up.
Right.
Nobody has had the ability to hype you yet, but without further ado, I want to show you guys a trailer for Hittin the High Road. It's filming in the fourth quarter, should finish up, so it will be in a market near you. Rest assured on that. Very exciting.
Have you ever wondered who's doing all the heavy lifting to legalize cannabis for the rest of us? Me too. I'm Stone Slade, and we're hitting the high road to take you on a tour of legal cannabis in America.
I was born and raised around cannabis. My childhood fell somewhere between a scene from the movie Almost Famous and a light episode of Narcos. My playgrounds growing up were Grateful Dead and Willie Nelson tour buses and arenas. Back then, to me, cannabis was as American as apple pie. It wasn't criminals that were smoking weed around me. It was my parents and their friends and the people that I saw every day. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I realized the negative label that society had placed on this amazing plant.
Marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug in the United States.
I mean, the cannabis plant is so misunderstood. You know, many people have never tried cannabis simply out of a fear of what would happen or how they'd react.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Does anyone remember the old movie Reefer Madness? This film had parents of unruly teenagers in a panic. I mean, whoever wrote this obviously never indulged because no one's ever transformed into a psychopathic killer after smoking a joint. Fast forward almost a century later, and cannabis is now legal either medicinally or recreationally in 20 plus states. But what does that really mean? The federal government is finally allowing this life-saving medical research to be done, and there's a whole new wave of green business owners emerging across the U.S., from neighborhood dispensaries and culinary infusion chefs to a twist on the old American staple, the bud and breakfast.
Business is booming, and I'm going to introduce you to the leading innovators of this billion-dollar industry, as well as spotlight the farmers that are taking a leap of faith in America's new cash crop.
Anybody that's ever tried their hand at some closet horticulture will tell you that not all cannabis plants are created equal. So we want to show you the farmers that are using state-of-the-art technology and are committed to bringing you the purest organic cannabis in the country. Cannabis patients and connoisseurs across the U.S. are unified in spreading the cold hard facts about cannabis use and helping to elect the officials who support their goals moving forward. The truth is, cannabis is safer than alcohol and cigarettes. I mean, doctors prescribe it to cancer patients, for God's sakes. One day, we can all hope that it'll be as socially acceptable as having a coffee with a friend in a coffee shop. God bless America.
Until then, we'll do our best to educate people away from the hippie stereotype with a behind-the-scenes look at the sophisticated industry.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Hey, there it is.
It's exciting, right? You know, so I mean, you're sitting here, you want to get away from the hippie stereotype. You grew up in hippie culture, Stone. Are your parents upset with you about this? I mean, is the family like, wait a second, you know, is this an exciting thing? I mean, is this a natural transition from where you wanted to go? I mean, did you think you were going to be doing this?
I think it's a natural progression. My parents are, you know, they love me. There's nothing wrong with the hippie stereotype, other than it's just you know, it's just a negative. It's a negative.
That's what it is.
Stain to society, and that's just, yeah, it's a stereotype, and it's just based on lies. So it's important then to go out and show, like we said, we're going to take you on a backstage tour of the cannabis industry. We're going to show you the farmers that are, you know, hardworking American guys that are out there busting their butts and
ladies, a lot of ladies. Thankful for the best. Some of the best in the industry are the ladies, Stone. So just remember that.
Sexual.
Oh, I know you're not at all. Now, trust me. There's a lot of women involved in production, which I love about this. But what is really cool at the end of the episodes, right? So nobody's seen the episodes yet because we haven't distributed it yet. But at the end of the episodes, everyone sits down for a dinner. You know, so you have a segment that, you know, I would say more or less focuses on you know, medical, and a great story there. A farmer. And then you have a segment, you know, like a segment on the farm and everything like that. And then a segment inside of maybe a dispensary or a kitchen. But then it culminates with this awesome dinner. A lot of brands are looking at that. Why did you want to put the dinner in there? I think it's great, but what was your reason for that?
You know, food's what brings everybody together. It doesn't really matter what your overall topic is. And, you know, somebody did it better than anybody else. And, you know, that's Anthony Bourdain. And with his show, With No Reservations, you know, it was just a way where it just, like I said, it brought people together. So we want to take you on that journey. We want to talk to a farmer. We want to give you a good medical story. We want to take you into just, you know, business owners and things going on behind the scenes. But then at the end of the episode, everybody from the episode sits down. Everybody gets to talk, meet. They might not know each other. They're networking and meeting each other, and it's just, you know, it's a family kind of feeling at the end.
That's great, and I'm so excited. And not to get off cannabis, because we're just starting on that, but psychedelics, right? I'm putting it out there. I'm seeing more and more articles, more and more documentaries, more and more conversations about this, right? So I'm going to ask you, Stephanie, right? Editor-in-chief on the spot, psychedelics. I know that, is that a conversation piece that you're going to start seeing more of it enter into the space? And if so, why is that? You're muted. I wish I can demute you.
That's a good thing. But yeah, no, 100%, you're going to be seeing more of it in Sensi, and it's not, and why would just be because it's in the air, it's everywhere, and the story is all around us. I'm reading a book right now, and it's on attention, and like it's a love letter to attention, essentially. And I thought it was about this woman's journey with stimulant medication, and I get to the second part, and it's all about psychedelics, and it's everywhere, and so it's kind of, you got to roll with what's touching the zeitgeist. And so that
you call it plant medicine. Every time I bring up psychedelics in a meeting, and it's like I sound like I'm trying to have like a trippy situation in a staff meeting. She wrangles me and she says it's the plant medicine segment in there. And what I love about that is it's about the diversity, right? So I mean, you know, when for, you know, you're looking at things beyond what would be considered illegal or questionable. You're looking at real lifestyle and drawing attention to how cannabis fits inside, or how your lifestyle fits in cannabis. What would you say your main way and approach of writing is at Sensi Magazine?
I'd say that cannabis is part of a lifestyle. It's not necessarily the focus, but it's a beneficial part to a wellness-driven lifestyle. And so we just need to treat it like that. it is plant medicine. It does wonderful things. And I think the reason the psychedelics might have a little bit more of a penetration into the mainstream market is they don't have all the stereotypes around them. Like there's not, you know, when you think of a crazy stoner, like, you know, everyone knows, like, an image right comes to mind. But when you're thinking of someone on psychedelics, it's, you know, it's kind of all over the place because I don't know. There's not that one.
I've been all over the place on them. So.
Story. I know, right? But yeah, and their journey, and I think people are more open to the healing aspects of it, and I think cannabis opened the door for that too, because they are people are hearing all about it, and the idea that it is an essential medicine has changed a lot of minds too. I was as COVID progressed, you could see the opportunity for cannabis to have a larger movement around the country because people who have always just thought of it as nothing but a gateway drug, we're suddenly hearing that it's essential and people need it, and because it's good for them. And it's one of the few industries that has not been impacted quite so much financially as others during the shutdown. So states that don't have programs are missing out on that revenue. And if they would bring cannabis in, that brings in taxes, and it's a no-brainer to me. So,
you know, our good friend Charles Warner, the co-founder here of Emerge, wonderful person. You know, one of his publications is Cannabis and Tech Today. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, what is this? Is this like you smoke weed and play with technology? But what is it's insert a good version of the intersectionality of society right now, right? So many things are intertwining. And what you're seeing is a diversity in writers, diversity of topicality. Andre, I'm going to throw it off to you. Do you see more of a diverse voice in the future of cannabis writing, right? You know, so you know, historically the industry has been, you know, fairly white, fairly male, you know, things of that nature. You've seen this Emerge conference, and I'm so impressed with the diversity of all the people, all the speakers and everything. Is that the wave of the future of the cannabis industry? Is it going to be more inclusive? Is there going to be more opportunity for everybody out there?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the way of the future, but when I designed the agenda, I think it's important to, you know, we've often had the all-black panel or maybe the all-Asian, but I think at this point, particularly in time in our nation, it's important to try to have representation from, you know, the Asian innovator sitting next to the black innovator, sitting next to the East Indian one, right, and bringing them all together, because that's where the different perspectives are exchanged, and that's where we start to have that connection. So that's what we largely did with the agenda, and made a point to do that, because you just don't see it, right? You don't see it a whole lot. And, you know, there's cultures that aren't represented. I mentioned the Native Americans, right? So we have that going on. We have, you know, we have really fine accomplishments out of East India and other places as well. And so, you know, those types of things aren't covered.
I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to check out the album that we've got a compilation. It's the Relief Concert Series. It's on sensimag.com/presents. And we have 25 artists. And the first track on this 25 album compilation, Thunderbeat, she's won 3 NAMI Awards, which is the Native American music industry, their version of the Grammys inside that organization. I think it's phenomenal. You know, I see more and more diversity from an ancillary perspective. You know, we had on earlier today, ArcView and Entourage Effect Capital and Tay Darnell, one of our co-founders. And the conversation is like, listen, now is the time to invest. Now is the time to get into it. Now is the time to be an entrepreneur, close some gaps. You know, David, I saw you close a gap with this film. Do you have anything else on the horizon? Are you trying to tell another story? What's next? I mean, not that CBD Nation is not enough. I just want more. I want to know what else you have an opinion on that's kind of unfavorable. So I know that we're going to have an Oscar award-winning documentary about that probably a year later. What's next for you, David?
Well, next is waiting for COVID to be over. And, you know, I after making this movie, I did something for National Geographic, which was a World War II documentary, and then COVID started, you know, so you know, we'll see. There's all sorts of ideas. I'm really attracted to doing things about science, because there's some amazing challenge about it, which is I'm not a scientist, so I don't understand science. And so it's really fun to try to learn it just enough to explain it to the layperson. So yeah, we'll see. I have no idea. The thing that was probably one of the most exciting moments for me relating to this film after it was finished was showing it to a doctor friend who saw it, and then at the end of the movie said, "I'm embarrassed." That was the doctor's reaction. It was physician. "I'm embarrassed because I don't know this and I can't offer it to my patients, and I don't know how to talk about it." And so, you know, anything that I can make that can have that reaction from someone who may change their life and the way they think based on that, I'm open to. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
I saw David. I saw Dr. Uma in your documentary, right? And I remember sitting at a coffee shop with Dr. Uma, asking her why cannabis and why this mission for you. And she says, The first time I heard about the endocannabinoid system, I felt like I had been frauded my entire education. I felt like I was lied to. Like, how can I not know about this thing that is a part of every piece of our being and a part of our medical ecosystem? And I had no idea. So anyways, I just thought
in a way I felt similar as a person with an opinion, you know. And I think we're so used to having opinions about things we don't know anything about. And I think society lately has really pushed us further into that. Once commenting on articles and Twitter began and Facebook, we're so used to having opinions on things we don't know anything about, right? People have opinions on virus science. Who gives a fuck about someone's opinion on virus science?
Virus science, right? It's the way of the future.
And on climate science, it's sort of a weird thing, right? And with cannabis, it's a small enough scientific topic. I mean, it's a gigantic scientific topic, but it requires just so little of study to understand that you don't know anything about it and that you were wrong. And I think that's what we have to think about in our communication in the media and how we talk about this. You know, we have to, I think about what are the things in the culture of cannabis that are uncomfortable for the outsiders. And this may include basic things like the word weed, because no one that I met in the scientific community, which was most of the people that I interviewed, or in the patient community, used the word weed. I mean, occasionally, but almost never. They used the word cannabis. And
correction, they just spoke cannabis, right? There's no correction.
I never heard any such. Meshulam never said weed.
That's good progress, right?
Meshulam say marijuana. He said cannabis. You know, and he doesn't say CBD. He says cannabidiol. He doesn't even say THC. He says tetrahydrocannabinol or whatever. Like these people say, they speak science. You know, and I think if we can figure out how to talk about cannabis in a way that makes it comfortable, we may need to come toward the people who are the people that need to be convinced, as opposed to say, you guys need to come to us. You know,
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. You know, and I know Stephanie. Go ahead, Stephanie. I know she's been messaging me. She's like, "Listen, I want to help you come somewhere with this."
Well,
go ahead.
Well, when you're talking about, you know, what's next for you, I would love to have you in Sensi magazine. If you're open to that, I want to tell this story because I was watching that the trailer and actually had goosebumps over here, and that's a story that needs to be told, and I'd love to help spread the word. But
I would be honored.
We'll help come to people for you, because I think you're exactly right. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah. Oh, just the idea of what could we do, and I think one of the things is just being open about our own cannabis use is something, because people still have like, oh my God, like stoners, and so just seeing people who are, you know, who are working hard and like have real jobs and have like positions, and we are motivated and entrepreneurial, and we, oh my God, we consume cannabis. Just being open about it. It's crazy.
It's weird for me, Steph, being an addict, right? You bring this up because, you know, I was a heroin addict. I mean, I was on BBC for this, for crying out loud. So it's not a hidden fact. So people look at me now, they're like, hey, listen, you work in the cannabis industry. Are you violating the 12 steps or something like that? I'm like, the reason why I am not a heroin addict, the reason why I'm so cogent and functional in life is because I found out how to use cannabis in a responsible way. And like, you know, I'm so thankful for people that put together content like all of you on this phone or on this meeting today, or on this panel, because if it wasn't for content like this, there would not be hope for the industry. There wouldn't be hope for the storyteller, that somebody that needs to make that tough decision, somebody that's going to uproot their family, move across the country to help their son and ultimately start a prolific magazine or create an unbelievable documentary or a television show that's going to transcend the entire country. I'm excited. You know, I'm going to end with you, Stone, because I know we have about 1 minute left here. What is your favorite market, or what is the market you're most excited about going into, and why, for the filming that's coming up?
Oh my gosh,
I did it to you, man. Is there some
There's so
state?
many.
I know there's got to be something that's piqued your interest, because later we're going to do another panel after the filming, and I'm going to ask you the same question and see if there's a reason after filming that your disposition changed on that particular state.
I think the California market, I want to get out there. I mean, well, when things settle down a little bit, I want to get out there. Just the players involved out there, some of the people I've read about. There's just certain people that really spark an interest for me that I'd like to see, and that's where I'm most curious about right now.
I love that, Stone. I'm so excited about this production coming up. Andre, I'm putting you on the spot. I'd love to see a guest. Of course, I got to ask Stephanie. She's in charge, but I'd love to see a guest contribution from you in Sensi Mag. You've got such an amazing voice. There's so many darn topics that I think would be great to get some messaging out. And please consider that. You know,
I really appreciate it. I'd love to. Yeah. And I was going to say, the next time I do that media panel, Stephanie, you've got to be on it. We needed some more. Well, we had one woman. We needed some more female representation. Next time you're on, we had a lot of fun too. And we smoked weed. We smoked weed during my.
Yes, you do. If you have not seen Andre's panels yet, you got to check it out. There you go. You know, and that's the thing. You know, Stephanie, I'm just so honored because this year, not only amazing Charlie awards coming out to the magazines this year, but recognized one of 2020's Folio's top women in media, and that's amazing. Coming from the cannabis space, starting a magazine from scratch and going all the way to the top of the industry. Some of the people that have been named in this particular realm before you, I'm talking the president of Condé Nast, some prolific movers and shakers in mainstream media. So much appreciated for this. I hope I get all the questions answered. I believe, Andre, our time is up at 3:30 here. I want to thank the live audience. We did open up for Ricky Williams today. So for those of you that are going to be out there, get into the Emerge Matrix. It's an absolutely phenomenal time. You can find, there's even some cool Easter eggs for whatever they call them in the video game world. So if you navigate enough, you will find some things. Find Randy and Dalton and these guys. They will tell you the secrets. But I love everything Emerge. I couldn't thank you enough. So this is Chris Foltz with the Sensi Media Group. And I want to thank our panelists on truly disrupting media because everyone on this panel has done that. So this is Chris Foltz. Thank you. And we'll be back to you soon. Take care now.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care, everyone.
Back to you in the studio, Dalton.
Thank you so much, Chris, and all of the panelists. Both of those trailers looked phenomenal, and the disruptive, impactful things that Sensi is doing is second to none for me. That was fantastic.